Some people don't prefer being alone because they gave up on people. They prefer it because, somewhere along the way, they realized solitude felt calmer, easier, more honest. Not because they can't connect, but because being around others too much can start to feel like wearing a version of themselves that needs constant effort. And once you notice that piece, it changes something. You can be in a room full of people and still feel like the quietest place is the one inside you. But not in a sad way, in a familiar way. Like you finally stopped fighting what was natural to you. Because for you, silence doesn't always feel empty. Sometimes silence feels like relief. In a world that keeps asking you to answer, explain, show up, reply, talk, react, and be available, silence can feel like the only place where nothing is pulling at you. And maybe that's why it matters so much. Not because nothing is happening there, but because, for once, nothing is demanding something from you. A lot of people treat being alone like a problem, like it means something is missing. Like if you're not constantly surrounded, constantly busy, constantly proving that your life is full, then something must be wrong. But what if it isn't wrong? What if this is just a different way of being in the world? Not broken, not cold, not even just introverted. Because the real difference is not whether you like people, it's whether you can be with yourself without needing to escape yourself. And that's not as common as it sounds. Because people can be tiring. Not always, not everyone, but the small talk, the automatic smiling, the conversations where nobody really says what they mean, the social version of you that has to keep nodding and responding and performing, it adds up. And once you start noticing how many interactions are not real connection, just habit, it becomes hard to unsee it. You don't hate people, you just stop being fed by things that only drain you. That's the part many people miss. A lot of people are uncomfortable when they're alone because their own mind gets loud. So they fill every gap. Music in the background, a screen in the hand, plans they don't even want, messages they don't really need to send, anything to avoid sitting with that inner space. But if you're someone who is okay alone, you may not feel that same urge to run. You can sit there, think, rest. Let your mind move without panicking about what comes up. And when you can do that, you discover something important. Your own company can be enough. Often, this starts earlier than people realize. Maybe you learned young how to entertain yourself. Maybe you had to figure things out without much help. Maybe you got used to not expecting too much from anyone, so you built a quiet little world inside yourself. Not perfectly, not without pain, but enough that being alone no longer feels like falling. It feels like returning. And over time, that changes the way you choose. You stop going out just because you were invited. You stop saying yes because it feels easier than explaining no. You stop meeting people out of guilt, habit, or fear of seeming distant. You begin to filter, not harshly, clearly. You can still socialize. You can still laugh, love, connect, show up. But you're no longer doing it to fill a hole. You're doing it because you actually want to be there. And that difference changes everything. Because once your private life feels enough, you don't need every moment to be witnessed. You can read something and not post it. Create something and not announce it. Spend a whole evening thinking, walking, resting, cleaning your space, or doing absolutely nothing impressive, and still feel like the time counted. That's rare now, because so much of life has become about proving that you are living it. But when you're truly okay alone, the experience itself is enough. You don't need applause for your peace. So no, preferring solitude does not mean you cannot love people. It does not mean you don't need anyone, ever. It does not mean you are shutting the world out. Sometimes it simply means you have stopped forcing yourself into places where your nervous system keeps saying, "This isn't for you." You stopped pretending every conversation deserves your energy. You stopped staying in relationships just because they are familiar. You stopped confusing access to you with connection to you. That is not isolation. That is self-respect. And eventually, you reach a point that looks strange from the outside. You don't need constant plans. You don't need constant noise. You don't need someone beside you just to feel like your life is real. You're just okay, in your room, on your own walk, with your own thoughts, in your own rhythm, not waiting to be rescued from yourself. And maybe the real question was never, why are you alone? Maybe the real question is, are you at peace when you are? Because if the answer is yes, then maybe what others call distance is actually clarity. Maybe what they call loneliness is simply a life that no longer needs to be performed. And maybe being enough for yourself is a quiet kind of strength. So tell me, when do you notice this difference the most in your own life? And if this helped you see something clearly, you can support the channel with a like or by becoming part of it.